Welcome, fantasy fans and book readers. Today, I am here to judge you by your opinions. Over the last few weeks, I've been posting questions in my community and getting your responses, finding out what fantasy books you prefer, what fantasy opinions you have, and today we're here to look at them, look at the answers, and see what you guys think, and see if I agree with you. If you like the idea of this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can always be notified when I'm doing one of these and putting questions out to you guys so we can make sure everyone's getting in on the action. So first up, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on Mistborn Era 2. How do you compare it to Mistborn Era 1? And is it something you only read because it's part of the Cosmere? So we had a pretty clear answer that 61% of you guys think Era 1 is better than Era 2. 7% think Era 2 is better than Era 1, which I highly agree with. I rate Era 1 much higher than Era 2. Era 2 I found just be a very solid 4 out of 5 across the series. A little bit of highs, some lows, but a very solid 4 out of 5. Nothing special, but I'm happy I read it. So for me personally, I only would recommend Era 2 to Cosmere readers or people into that specific style of fantasy, the urban steampunk, steam engine sort of era with goofy comedy in a detective world. So if that doesn't match what you're looking for and you aren't a big Cosmere person, I would stick with just Era 1. Just get the epic fantasy, get in, get out, have a good time. So next I wanted to learn how you guys are doing most of your reading. So I asked, are you doing physical reading, ebooks, or audiobooks? And this one blew me away with only 11% of you guys reading audiobooks. For me, I do 50% of my reading purely on audio. I do most of it through Libby, but I do a little bit on Audible as well. And I thought this would be much more popular, but turns out most of you guys are reading real books or ebooks. And I do all three, but I was surprised audiobooks wasn't more popular up there. Then I had to find out, what's your favorite Stormlight book? For me personally, I loved Words of Radiance. I think it's just one of the best books written of all time. And I find in Stormlight, it's the book where everything gets going. There was a lot of setup in the Way of Kings. There was a lot of world building. There was a lot of getting to the place where the action's about to happen. And Words of Radiance is where all the action happens. I thought The Way of Kings was basically a prologue for Words of Radiance. So I was a little surprised when I saw that the most popular book you guys put down was The Way of Kings, closely followed by Words of Radiance. And there's quite a big drop-off for Oathbringer and Rhythm of War. I can definitely see why The Way of Kings is so popular. Firstly, it's the book that we've all read. If you've read the Stormlight Archive, you have to start with book 1. You may not have gotten to the others yet. And also, it's the book that introduced you to the world, to the characters. And that can definitely be a very impactful reason for why you'd pick one of the book as your favourite, if it's the thing that introduced you to the world. Last week, we had John Gwynne drop his cover for The Fury of the Gods, book 3 of the Bloodsworn saga. And the cover just looked insanely gorgeous. Snacker, a massive snake, just driving up out of the sea in front of a little Viking boat, just looking absolutely menacing. All three of these covers are absolutely stunning, and I just want to get a consensus on what's everyone's favorite. So we had Shadow of the Gods, 45%, Hunger of the Gods, 33%, and Fury of the Gods, 22%. So pretty even, pretty well loved, but yeah, dragons just have to win out, of course. I personally put Hunger of the Gods because I love dragons the most, but I do love wolves. Then returning to discovering your opinions on Brandon Sanderson, I wanted to know, what's your favourite Mistborn Era 1 novel? And this one played out exactly as I thought it would. The vast majority was Mistborn: The Final Empire. Then of the other two, The Hero of Ages was placed before The Well of Ascension. And for me, no matter how good the ending to Hero of Ages was and how much of a shocking twist, it will never beat that first Sanderson book I read, The Final Empire, where it's just so much intrigue, so much set up in book 1, with such a mind-blowing conclusion that that book will stick in my mind forever. I really enjoyed that plot much more than the plot of the last two books. It just felt more contained, and the forces that were at work just made a lot more sense to me. But yeah, let me know what you thought of all these. And as we go, please comment down your thoughts on all of these opinions that I'm chucking out. So if you've been watching my videos, you'll know that this year I've been working through the First Law Trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, and I'm currently 2 books in, and I'll be starting The Last Arguments of Kings sometime in the next month. So I wanted to know, what's everyone's favourite First Law trilogy? Is it the First Law? Is it the Age of Madness or the standalones? And by overwhelming majority, we had 72% with the First Law trilogy, then 23% with Age of Madness, and then just 5% for the three standalones. And that definitely could be that a lot of people have just read the first trilogy and haven't got to Age of Madness yet. But I was a little surprised, as I do hear many great things about the Age of Madness trilogy and how a lot of people do rate it higher than the First Law trilogy. So if you've read both, please let me know which one you preferred. Then we have to return to the classic series that we just all grew up loving, and that's The Lord of the Rings. Which one was your favourite? The Hobbit or any of the three from the main series? My personal favourite from the main series is The Two Towers, but I ranked The Hobbit just a little bit higher than that, just from how fun and whimsical it was. It was just an adventure, wasn't it? Really delightful, and it took the votes with this one as well. It won with 35%, though The Fellowship of the Ring and The Return of the King were both sitting there on 26%, with Two Towers at 14%. So I think The Hobbit kind of stole voters away from the other books. So it'd be interesting to see if we took The Hobbit out, what would be everyone's favourite just Lord of the Rings book. So returning to Mistborn, then I wanted to know what's everyone's favourite ever 2 book. And we just had an overwhelming amount of people say The Lost Metal with 45%. And then it was about 17 and 19% for the other 3 books. And for me, they were all very 4 out of 5 for me, so I didn't really have any main preference. I kind of liked Shadow of Self, but yeah, no real preference on that for me. As I've been reading more recently and discovering all the great things of modern fantasy, I've been discovering that a lot of these books have hard magic systems. And sometimes I find they work really well, and sometimes I find there's a few too many rules for me, and it takes me out of the world. So I wanted to ask you guys, would you prefer hard magic or soft magics in your stories? Now, I prefer like a little bit of melding of both, but I think soft magic can be really enjoyable if it's like a hard magic but we don't get the rules. But if it's like Mistborn, I do prefer the hard magic. So here we just had a slight skewing to the hard magic systems, and I think that's indicative of the times that we're in, where we just want some more rules. We want things to make sense. We don't want magics that can be too overpowering. So we want rules to what we're doing, which can definitely make a story better for a lot of cases. A lot of my favorite books that I've been reading recently are written by indie authors. We've got The Bound and the Broken by Ryan Cahill, which is top 3 all time for me. Dungeon Crawler Carl, which has just been really fun to read. And any book written by Andy Peliquin, I'm just fully addicted, and it's all I want to read at the moment. And I'm trying really hard not to start Darkblade this month because I need to talk about the books to you guys. But it led me to thinking, how many of you guys are also reading indie books? So I asked, who's read an indie book or who plans to soon? So we have 17% of people that haven't read an indie book and don't intend to, 60% of people have read one, or 24% of people haven't read one but do plan to. And I found this really promising. There's so many great books out there that aren't traditionally published that people are missing out on if they're not checking them out. Dungeon Crawler Carl is just one of the funnest reads you'll ever have. The Bound and the Broken is just classic fantasy done with modern tropes. It's something a lot of people are going to love. There's so many series that I've got planned to read this year that people are just missing out on because they think the author's no good because they're indie, which is just such a misconception. So now we're down to the last 2 questions that I asked, and these are the most interesting 2 for me. The first one I asked was, of the 3 big unfinished series, if you could get one finished, which one would you want that to be? Would you want it to be A Song of Ice and Fire, The Kingkiller Chronicles, or The Gentleman Bastards? And the overwhelming answer was A Song of Ice and Fire. This may well be because Game of Thrones got an adaptation and it's a lot more popular, but I personally completely agree. I think Game of Thrones is incredible. So then, the big question I posted this morning, the Stormlight Archive, the modern favourite, or the Lord of the Rings, the one that set it all up. And we had 61% Stormlight Archive, 39% the Lord of the Rings. This isn't too surprising if you think about it. This makes sense, but I also thought there'd be more comments and more people mentioning the Lord of the Rings. So if you could only read one, if you could only get your friends to read one, would you want it to be the Lord of the Rings or the Stormlight Archive? Which one's better? What do you guys reckon? For me, this is a tough one, and I think it'd be the Stormlight archive for me. I also do really enjoy the Lord of the Rings, and if it meant I couldn't watch the Lord of the Rings movies, I think I'd have to do Lord of the Rings. So I'm very much on the edge with that one. But as always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, watching me talk and ramble about books and fantasy opinions. Please let me know what questions you want me to cover the next time, what opinions we need to gather, what thoughts we need to get down. Tell me what things you agreed with, what things you disagreed with. Let's get some chat going. I always love getting in the comments and having a conversation with you guys. If you want to help me pick my book for my book club next month or join my free book club on Fable, look down in the comments. It's right there. I'm doing Empire of Silence at the moment. It's a great time. I'm on YouTube, I'm on TikTok, plenty of free content. If you want to check out my Patreon, I'd really appreciate it. If you've got a book that you want me to read, jump onto that Patreon, chuck it in there. You'll be the only person in that section and I'll have to read your book. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.